I had always considered myself the quirky one in my family, the goofball who would dance in the kitchen while cooking spaghetti and tell terrible jokes just to lighten the mood. My name is Harper Bennett, and I am 28 years old, living in the small town of Willow Creek. The kitchen was my haven, a cozy little space where culinary chaos reigned supreme. The vivid yellow walls seemed to hum with life whenever I was bustling about, flipping spatulas and tasting sauces with exaggerated flair. It was one of those balmy fall evenings, and as the scent of garlic wafted through the air, I couldn't help but shimmy a little to the crackling tunes of my favorite playlist blasting from my phone. Cooking is just a dance party with good food. I often mused to myself, a mantra I repeated while twirling around the island. Yet, despite the joy I found in simple pleasures, an unsettling sadness became a heavy cloak around my shoulders as I thought about my family. My sister Emma and I were always inseparable, spending hours sharing our hopes, dreams, and laughter, much like our favorite television characters Phil and Claire from the sitcom we adored watching. But lately, our bond had cracked in ways that left me vulnerable and unsure. Emma, with her endless spreadsheets and calculations on how to have the perfect life, had transitioned from my biggest cheerleader to a spectator watching from the sidelines. I was determined to bring her back, to reclaim the connection that felt more like a distant memory than a present reality. Yummy, yummier, yummiest, I sang to the bubbling pot of sauce before me, and though I swirled playfully, the echoes of my parents' dissatisfaction lingered in the background. Their words were harsh stings, replaying in my mind like a broken record. My father, with his stern demeanor and laundry list of expectations, would often dismissively wave off my lightheartedness. "Harper, you need to grow up," he would say, his voice brimming with disappointment, as if I had slipped out of his grasp and become the cause of his increasingly gray hairs. I wanted to scream at him, but this is me. This is how I survive the stifling existence you've built around us. Then there was my mother, caught in the role of the peacemaker, forever twirling around the chaos like a frazzled ballerina, pointing out every misstep and mistake. Her efforts to control every little detail. "Harper, have you thought about your career?" "Emma, don't forget about your deadlines," only pulled us deeper into shadows of worry. I felt like a caged animal, fighting against the invisible bars of their expectations, terrified I would collapse under the weight of it all. Their incessant demands for perfection trapped me, leaving no room for the silly dance parties that I cherished. Days turned into a monotonous blur of strained conversations and thicker silences, so heavy that they hung in the air like fog. Emma and I avoided eye contact more often and shared even fewer laughs. It was as though an impenetrable wall had been constructed between us, brick by brick, with my silly jokes on one side and her bursts of anxiety on the other. Each morning breakfast felt rehearsed, a performance where our roles were to play the dutiful sisters. I tried to keep my spirits afloat, while she preferred to dive into her own thoughts, suffocating the air with her tension. It all came crashing down one evening during dinner, the air charged with a tension that buzzed like electricity. I remember the clatter of utensils echoing off walls meant to be filled with laughter, and my heart pounding as I filled the silence with a feeble attempt at humor. What did the spaghetti say to the meatball? I began with a grin, waiting for the familiar chuckles, or at least a groan that would affirm my efforts. But the response that followed exploded like a balloon bursting in my face. You think this is a game? You never take anything seriously, Emma shouted, her words slicing through the silence like a knife. Her face was a storm of emotions, anger, hurt, and something deeper. I had never seen her so distraught, and as she unleashed years of repressed resentment, the pressure in the room cracked and shattered the fragile peace within our family. I could feel my heart sinking beneath the weight of her words, and suddenly I was frozen, staring at my sister as her eyes flashed with betrayal. Emma, I stuttered, my voice caught in my throat, but she would not let me finish. It was as though the floodgates of pent-up frustration had burst open, and she unleashed a torrent of feelings that struck me deep. You think it is all fun and games. You don't understand what real life is. It's not about jokes and silly dances. It is about responsibilities and expectations. Do you even care? Her voice trembled, echoing off the walls and leaving me reeling in shock. I do care. I managed to cry back, the heat rising to my cheeks. But I care about our family. Care about us. Why can't you see that? Caring means more than surface-level fun. She shot back, tossing her fork down as if it burned her fingers. I could see her breaths were shallow, the crack in our foundation visible, and I felt helpless, desperately wanting to bridge the growing rift, but not knowing how. In that moment, something shifted. It was as if our colorful chaos was replaced by monochrome shadows, and chaos descended, crashing into our family dinner like an intruder at a quiet gathering. My heart broke as silence once again enveloped us, thick as molasses. However, that chaotic evening released an uncomfortable truth. I knew I was being stifled, held back by both my own fears and by the weight of our family expectations. Emma, my sister, who had been my comedic sidekick, had just leveled accusations that showed the depth of her resentment, and I couldn't brush them off anymore. Days turned into an agonizing silence, and I watched as Emma no longer confided in me, opting instead for a bitter quiet. My heart ached as she moved through our shared spaces like a ghost, invisible and unreachable. Frustration twisted in my gut, mingling with guilt and helplessness. Each passing day felt like a missed opportunity, and every night, as I pulled the covers over my head, I wondered how we had fallen so far. I missed the laughter, the goofy banter, the easy connection we shared, and too stubborn to accept our family had changed. I began to ponder ways to reclaim it. Then it hit me. If we could share our struggles, just like Phil and Claire did on their show, perhaps I could create an opportunity for healing. I wanted to bring us back together, to somehow convince Emma that a connection was still possible between us. Maybe it was time for an intervention of sorts, a way to create a space where we could confront our family dynamics head-on. With Emma's birthday approaching like a train barreling down the tracks, I seized the opportunity to orchestrate a gathering. a bold scheme to hopefully draw us all back into the warmth of togetherness. This had to be more than just a gathering of family. This needed to be a chance for us to inspire change, a moment to mend or reveal the cracks in our family facade. It was time for me to take control of our narrative, even if it meant navigating through uncharted waters. I imagined what this soiree would look like. My mind raced with colorful dreams of paper streamers in bright hues hanging from the ceiling, laughter bubbling over like champagne, and the delicious aroma of home-cooked delights enticing everyone through the door. I could picture my father's skepticism easing, my mother melting into the role of hostess with far less tension, and Emma eventually allowing herself to crack a smile over the memory of simpler times. I spent hours refining details, planning, and in creating a playful menu that included Emma's favorite carrot cake, embellished with a rainbow of frosting. I envisioned a grand welcome that would envelop everyone, lots of silly party games, and music blasting, everything to lure my sister out of her shell. I wanted her to remember we could laugh, even through our struggles, and see beyond our insecurities. After all, laughter was the bread and butter of our family. As I looked around the glimmering kitchen filled with my favorite utensils and a pot bubbling over, I felt the flicker of hope begin anew. This could work, I thought, biting my lip, trying to push away the nagging doubts that twisted my stomach. I was willing to do what it took to ensure this plan succeeded, to pull at the threads of our frayed connection until something beautiful and new emerged. I would not allow the humor and joy to be extinguished from our lives without a fight. The invitation I crafted was simple, an invitation layered with vulnerability and warmth. After a few drafts and quite a few dashes of courage, I finally penned the message. Join us for a celebration sprinkled with laughter, love, and maybe a dance party under the stars. Let's recreate the joy we once shared. I miss you, and I hope you'll come. Sending it off, I wondered if my words would convey my sincerity, my longing for our relationships to bloom once again. As I prepared for the night of the gathering, I couldn't shake the cocktail of nerves stirring in my stomach. But there was also an undercurrent of excitement, a glimmer of hope about this opportunity to mend our frayed threads. Tonight would either turn the tide toward healing, or it would show us how acrimonious the rifts had become. But either way, I was ready to face the consequences. Somehow, we were going to rediscover the connection that had been shattered and buried beneath expectations and misunderstandings. I refused to let go of the dream of rebuilding our family into a unit filled with laughter and support once again. And I would fight for it, no matter how deep into the labyrinth of emotions we had to venture as the days ticked down to Emma's birthday. I found myself enveloped in a whirlwind of preparation. The plan needed to be flawless, a masterful combination of joie de vivre and undeniable truth. My parents were experts at building walls, layering their criticisms with love and suffocating expectations. But it was time for those walls to be chipped away, brick by brick. I tapped into the memories of dinner tables filled with silence, the echoes of their unyielding voices that whispered disapproval in our ears long after their words faded. It stung, but now it would fuel my fire. I suggested the surprise birthday party with hope budding in my chest. It was a soft nudge into the realm of family celebrations that had long been stripped of joy. The invitations went out, each one crafted with care and a touch of slyness, reaching out to friends and family who shared in our unvoiced pain. The promise of laughter lingered in the air, a sweet distraction from the sharp thorns of past grievances. As I watched the days fall away towards the event, the anticipation swelled, filling our house with electric energy. Then came the day itself, and upon entering our home, I was greeted by a symphony of sounds. Guests mingled in clusters, their voices creating a warm hum that danced around us like an invisible cloak. I inhaled deeply as the aroma of freshly baked cake assaulted my senses, a recipe painstakingly followed by Emma, despite us always teasing her about needing perfection. Twinkling lights hung from the ceiling, throwing confetti-like shadows that mirrored the joyful expressions sprinkled across the attendees' faces. Faces that all bore the same weary burns from similar harangues of our parents. The laughter felt contagious, as though it were balm, a healing salve for wounds that had festered quietly beneath our skin for too long. And yet, as I moved through the room, I could feel the palpable tension, a set of strings pulled just too tight around all of us. I silently slipped away from the revelry, my heart thrumming in my chest like a little bird desperate to escape a cage. In this quiet moment away from the crowd, I reminded myself of what had inspired my roast, my favorite family sitcom. That show had captured the dark humor woven into the fabric of family gatherings, turning it into a vehicle for truth. I could picture the smiling faces of our guests, the laughter echoing, and it filled me with resolve. My palms were slightly damp as I flipped through my carefully constructed notes, a blend of wit and acid that pierced through all the layered facades. My heart raced as I took a deep breath and prepared to step onto that makeshift stage. The living room turned into a performance space, adorned for the solemn celebration of my sister's existence. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, allowing the rhythm of the crowd's laughter from the previous anecdotes to ring in my ears. Welcome to the most extraordinary birthday bash for the most meticulous planner I know, my sister Emma. But remember, I raised my voice slightly to hold their attention. Tonight is not just about cake and presents. It's about illuminating the truths we have all whispered behind closed doors. I paused, letting my words wash over the guests like ripples in water. The room quieted momentarily, myriad gazes fixated on me, some curious, others in anticipation, and a few tinged with concern. I searched their faces, some shared glances, conveying a silent solidarity against our shared struggles. Emboldened, I fixed my gaze forward, scanning for my parents. They were seated together, arms crossed tightly as their expressions morphed from joy to uncertainty. I took a steadier breath and continued, "Let us not forget our dear mother, whose brand of love was as fierce as it was complicated. She loved us so much. She felt the need to sow her expectations into every aspect of our lives, from the meals we ate to the people we dated. Laughter erupted in waves, not mere chuckles, but genuine guffaws that resonated through the room. I looked over to see my mother's color draining, her expression a mix of shock and disbelief, as if she had just stepped on a nail that had been hiding in the carpet for years. This wasn't just playful banter. It was a confrontation disguised in humor's clothing. I took a moment to relish it. And how about our father? I pivoted my attention, noticing him squirming slightly in his seat, who generously imparted lessons on humor that taught us it is best when it is not welcomed, but forced. The room became a cauldron of laughter, the kind that swells and ebbs yet did not let itself be silenced. Around the table, nods of agreement spread like wildfire. I could even see some of my father's friends chuckling, their sympathy hanging in the air to guide us all through this delicate dance together. Yet, I caught a glimpse of the trembling in my father's hand, the same hand that had once raised to silence us during arguments, now clutching the edge of the table, knuckles white. I could feel the tension sloughing off like old paint under a fresh coat. And there it was, the sweet taste of freedom. Every punchline I delivered peeled back layers of shame, sadness, and anger that had previously kept us shackled. I could almost hear the clicks of locks releasing, doors opening, and whether my parents wanted to realize it or not, they were starting to be part of a dialogue they could no longer ignore. The air thrummed with exhilaration, yet a familiar undercurrent of terror gripped me. I could see Emma behind me now, her laughter infectious and buoyant. It felt as if she were infused with anticipation that mirrored mine, guiding me forward, lending me her spirit as if to say, "Let's do this together." Each line I spoke felt like a gentle knock on the door of a locked room, urging truths forgotten to flow into the open. Now, let's talk about the infamous family vacations, I proclaimed, heart racing at the daring edge of nostalgia. You know, those times we piled ourselves into the overcrowded car with our excitement barely contained, only to end with Dad's miserable playlist blaring, while we waited for Mom to complete yet another round of Are We There Yet? The laughter was uproarious, rich and sweet, filling the corners of the room until it spilled out the windows. I could see the glimmers of acknowledgement flicker across many faces, and I marveled at the way those shared experiences, once steeped in bitterness, now wrapped us in a cozy embrace of camaraderie. But then, the laughter began to tinge with nervous energy. I spotted my mother and father exchanging glances, their discomfort palpable, yet I could not turn back now. Oh, and let's not forget our precious family dinners, served with a side of polite criticism. I let the words linger, letting the laughter wash over me once more. Those evenings felt like a war zone. Every bite we took directly on the battlefield of expectations. Is that meatloaf you whipped up for us really the best you could do? Talk about a morale killer, right? As I spoke, I could feel the tension within the room morphing, twisting into new shapes of understanding and diversity. Emma finally began to laugh wholeheartedly, her hands clutching her stomach as if her body were struggling to contain the joy that welled up inside. It was contagious, and I saw others start to follow suit, forming a circle of shared glee, an alliance against our past. I glanced back at my parents, their expressions battling between confusion and realization, the facade beginning to crack, allowing glimpses of humanity to peek through. But then I saw something shift in my father's features. His attempts to choke back laughter faltered, and I could sense a battle waging within him. How long could he maintain this semblance of control? I pressed on, fueled by the newfound energy surrounding me. And Mom, oh, Mom, your text messages. I swear you used 3 exclamation points to signify every emotion, as though one wasn't enough to convey the gravity of your latest critique or passive-aggressive suggestion. The audience erupted, laughter spilling from lips, and my father's shoulders finally shook with the temptation to laugh. It felt like the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. The truth danced between us, weaving a new thread into the taut fabric of our family canvas, a new story we could choose to tell. As the room filled with the glorious sound of voices intertwined in laughter, I realized I was breaking free, not only for me, but for Emma too. I could see in her eyes the realization we finally had moments of our own, one that shimmered brighter than the stars we always gazed upon, wishing for better days. Emma was smiling now, really smiling, her spirit rising to reclaim the laughter that had been so jaded by the past. Let's be honest, though, I continued, my tone shifting, always dancing, but never faltering. The best gift we have ever received from these so-called family values is our ability to laugh at our own absurdity. You two have made a comedy show out of our lives. The crowd erupted once more, and I felt the thrill of success thrumming through my veins. With every punchline, every shared memory, and all the heartfelt roast moments I crafted, I felt the cage of silence weakening, retreating into the shadows where it belonged. The atmosphere had transformed into something vibrant and alive, a mosaic of emotions blending together, some still sharp-edged, but increasingly softening at their corners. I returned my gaze to Emma, and I knew then we were not alone. In this moment, as we dismantled the silence, I was reminded that this was not solely revenge, it was liberation. The laughter of relatives and friends felt like confetti raining down on us. The judgmental scrutiny disintegrated into laughter, and the shadows that once loomed heavy overhead began to dissipate. And as my roast continued, I could see it flicker and spark, igniting the essence of who we were beneath the expectations. The stories, a shared tapestry that had been woven across the years, finally found a voice. Emma's laughter became my anthem. Finally, we were ready to step into the light. Together the party continued, laughter and music weaving through the air. But I was no longer the passive observer fading into the wallpaper. As I stood there, my heart thrumming beneath my chest, I realized that this was my moment. The room pulsated with an energy that felt electric, and I took a deep breath, letting the weight of my thoughts spill out, like ink quivering just before it touches the page. By the way, Let's not forget the complexities of being sisters in this house, I said, my voice steady yet laced with an urgency that surprised even me. I glanced toward Emma, who stood close, her eyes reflecting an understanding that encouraged me to press on, as if her very presence wrapped around me like a protective cloak. No one told us that perfection is a heavy cloak to wear. We are allowed to be ourselves, and we never needed to conform to roles we did not choose. The words felt liberating, lightening burdens I had carried for so long. The room fell silent, the music fading as curious eyes turned toward me. I felt the air shift, thick with anticipation, hanging like a spider's web, just waiting for something to break it. Emma stepped forward, emboldened by my declaration, and spoke with a fierce clarity that cut through the tension. We exist beyond the labels of perfection. My heart raced, matching the cadence of her voice. We are not just the daughters or the roles you expect us to play. We are quirky, flawed individuals with dreams bigger than this house allows. Her words rang out like a clarion call, echoing off the walls laden with years of our family's carefully crafted image. The palpable discomfort I sensed in my parents slowly started to crack, revealing a depth of reflection that had long been buried beneath years of expectations. I locked eyes with my mother, and for the first time, I saw something other than her usual facade, a flicker of recognition mixed with regret. Harper, we never meant, suddenly, the room erupted in laughter, children's voices and adults' chuckles intertwining. But it was different this time. It wasn't the nervous laughter of people unsure of how to respond. It was healing laughter. It bounced off the walls, changing the air almost instantly. Barriers that had seemed impenetrable began to crumble like sandcastles under an incoming tide. I mean, who really wanted to be perfect anyway? I smiled wider now, feeding off the energy that had surged in the room. Perfection is just an impossible standard we forced ourselves into. I noticed Emma nodding in agreement, her hands animated as she gestured dramatically. The humor intertwined with the honest truth of our lives sparked more laughter, and I felt the room warming as if we were all huddled together around a cozy fire. My mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears, shimmering like stars in the night sky. It was a sight that twisted my heart, a bittersweet moment. It were tears of clarity, of realization, and perhaps even a touch of remorse as she took a hesitant step toward us. I never wanted you to feel like you weren't enough. I just thought I was doing what was best for you, and hurting us in the process, I said, the words tumbling out before I could pause to weigh them. I didn't mean to sound accusatory, but it felt like a truth that needed to be laid bare. You held us to unreal standards, and in trying to protect us, you stifled us. My father, who had been standing quietly, eyes downcast, suddenly lifted his gaze. His expression was one of disbelief. It was as if I had peeled back the layers of his facade just as I had done with my own. But I was only trying to, he faltered, dismay written all over his features. I thought I could make you stronger. Stronger, Emma scoffed, her voice shaking with equal parts frustration and hurt. You thought building a perfect version of us would make us stronger. It only made us different, like we were playing some role in a show designed for your approval. We are not puppets. A delicate silence unfurled as my father started to tremble. His hands, usually so steady, now quaked as he clenched them into fists at his sides. I could feel the tension rising like a tide, pulling us all deeper into the moment. "You should have seen us, shouldn't you?" he began, the words tumbling out with urgency, as if he were desperate to grasp onto every ounce of emotion that was swirling in the air. "I thought I was doing this for you both. I wanted you to be prepared for the world, to never feel inadequate. But I never considered how it would hurt you." "It hurt. It suffocated us," I whispered, allowing the heaviness of those words to settle into the space where they resonated. "In your pursuit of perfection, you taught us to bury our true selves." As I watched my father, a flicker of anguish pooled in his blue eyes, glistening like reflections of sorrowful oceans. Silent tears found their way down his cheeks, tracing paths that revealed a father stripped bare of his armor. The sight twisted something deep inside me. It was an odd blend of pain and relief. I had never seen him cry. It pierced through the years of frustration and anger I had harbored against him. Was it worth it to see him this vulnerable? I was not yet sure. I had only ever known him to wear the mask of strength, commanding authority, while lovingly yet rigidly guiding us in the direction he felt was right. But now, in this emotional storm, I sensed a softer part of him emerging. "I didn't know," he gasped through choked breaths. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you both." Murmurs of agreement rippled across the crowd, a chorus of validation that surrounded us like a warm embrace. The laughter had transformed into something more sophisticated, more layered, blending joy with pain, healing with longing. "We need to talk about this," I said, my voice breaking under the weight of so much emotion. "We need to talk about a new beginning." The atmosphere sparked with revelation. It felt as if the very air was charged, vibrating with unspoken truths and realizations. My mother stepped closer, her arms opening wide as if inviting Emma and me to collapse into her. But it was new ground for us, so we held back, gathering our resolve instead. "We want to be front and center in our own lives, not just shadows in your attempts to define us," I clarified, the words empowering and emboldening me. Emma reached out, her hand clasping mine tightly, grounding me with her warmth as my heart raced. "We want to be known, not just for what you want us to be," she added, her voice trembling but fierce. "We want our dreams to be validated, our imperfections to be loved." My mother's breath hitched at this, unable to hide the glimmer of hope that bloomed behind her soft features. "Your dreams are valid. Then let us pursue them without fear," I interjected, the urgency in my voice catapulting us all forward. "We can't afford to hide our identities for the sake of a glossed-over family reputation." At this party, the laughter is freeing, but the truth has to follow. Tears continued to fall down my father's face. It felt like a release, a heartbreaking release we had all needed for far too long. "I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to understand." The sincerity in his voice rendered me momentarily speechless, a tangled ball of emotions threatening to spill over. Around us, Friends continued to chatter, plates clanking in the background as laughter broke while bringing dishes to close. Yet within this microcosm, time seemed to stretch. It was as if I held the world at bay, cradling these raw, tender moments that would surely shape us for years to come. Moments that acted like scrolls unfurling, revealing the family we long to be. Then, let's create space for honesty, I said, a warmth spreading through my chest, igniting hope anew. Let's create a home that allows us to be quirky, flawed, and spirited, exactly who we are. But we can't do it alone. We need you as allies, not just guardians. Let us be allies in this, Emma echoed back, her voice ringing with conviction. Let's pledge to work together, to support everything each of us aspires to be. And just like that, laughter erupted again, this time with more buoyancy, energy melding with hope, realization sparking an awakening not just within me, but all around us. Hands reached towards each other, breaking the invisible barriers that had separated us for too long. I could feel the warmth in the room swaddle us, a tight-knit community forging a future that danced between dreams and reality. To breathe in this moment was to inhale freedom, allowing me to envision a tomorrow filled with possibilities. The realization that it was no longer just Emma and me against our heritage marked a new chapter of resilience, allying with our parents to build a future nourished by understanding and acceptance. It felt monumental, like breaking through the surface of water after holding my breath for too long. I glanced over at my sister, whose fierce determination mirrored my own, and I knew we were no longer two separate threads in a tug of war against tradition. We had woven ourselves into a tapestry of hope, bound together now by shared dreams that would no longer be held captive. Together, I said softly, my heart racing. It starts here, tonight, together. And with that, the weight of expectation dissipated as we stood united, a family reborn amidst laughter, acceptance, and the promise of a vibrant tomorrow as the twilight poured in. The warm golden light spilled through the windows, casting a magical glow on the faces around me. The atmosphere shifted from one of celebratory festivity to something deeper, something more essential, unity. I watched as friends and family began to connect on an emotional level, tears brightening their eyes, turning into heartfelt embraces. The joyous sounds of laughter that filled the room started to mingle with the weight of apologies that floated in the air, strumming the chords of a familial harmony I had longed for. My heart raced when I felt my father's presence draw closer. He stood before me, his figure a mix of strength and vulnerability, illuminated in the fading light. "I am so sorry, Harper," he said, his voice thick and choked with emotion. I could see the tears glistening in his eyes, reflections of years gone by. "I never understood how my words affected you. I was wrong to dismiss the person you are." His admission struck a chord deep within me, resonating like a haunting melody of forgiveness that I had never thought possible. How vivid the feeling was, a cocktail of relief, disbelief, and burgeoning hope swirling inside my chest. "What do you mean?" I managed to whisper. I felt the weight of the moment like a heavy cloak wrapping around us. "I thought you would never get it." My voice trembled as I tried to keep the tears at bay. The words I had yearned to hear my entire life were finally escaping his lips, and it was surreal. Somehow, in the flickering shadows of our past, a light had materialized, exposing the truth we had both tried to ignore for far too long. Before he could respond, my mother stepped in, the tender grace of her presence soothing the room further as she cradled Emma close to her chest, both of them entwined in a fragile moment of connection. I could see the raw emotion painted across her face, her cheek shimmering with the tracks of unshed tears. I realize now that I have tried too hard to control everything rather than to let you flourish, she confessed, her voice thick with untapped remorse. The sadness in her tone mirrored my own as I breathed heavily, overwhelmed by the wave of vulnerability she showed. I thought I was protecting you, Harper, but all I did was stifle your spirit. The sincerity in her words felt like an embrace, a tentative truce that bound us. With every syllable, the walls that had divided us began to soften. I felt an unfamiliar warmth radiate through the emptiness I had carried for so long, enveloping me like a soft blanket. It was a sensation of acceptance, a burgeoning understanding that I had secretly craved for years. Mom, I said, struggling to articulate the whirlpool of emotions swirling inside me. I didn't know I could stand up for myself and still be loved. I thought I had to be someone I wasn't to make you happy. In that moment, all the misunderstandings and heartaches flooded back, years of struggling to earn their approval, of feeling like a square peg in a round hole, of being silenced, diminished, and ultimately lost. Our friends stood there, spectating the raw metamorphosis of our family, their presence now a backdrop that enhanced the emotional backdrop unfolding before us. The healing moments were real, tangible, and vibrant. Laughter soon returned like a gentle tide, washing away old resentments and replacing them with a spirit of camaraderie and warmth. We shared stories after the roast, allowing the cherished sentiments to rise from within, discussing dreams and aspirations without the looming fear of judgment. Do you remember when we went camping and I nearly set the tent on fire? I suddenly blurted out, a rush of amusement bubbling over in my chest as I recalled my clumsy attempt at lighting a campfire. I swear I thought that was the end of our family trips. A chuckle escaped my lips, and the laughter quickly spread, igniting faces around me until the room filled with raucous humor. Yes, I thought we might actually have to roast marshmallows over the flames of your absolute failure. My father ribbed, his eyes dancing with mischief. The light glinted off the remnants of his tears, but now they sparkled with joy. Each shared moment became a brick in the foundation of not just healing, but an evolving relationship that stretched its arms wide open. The night unfolded, layered with laughter, heartfelt connections, and silent acknowledgments of our imperfections. I glanced at Emma, her wide eyes darting from face to face, drinking in the new dynamic with fascination and hope reflected in her expression. You know, she said thoughtfully, I like this version of you guys. You are not always in battle mode. Nobody could argue with that. We really were an army of flawed warriors, banding together at last on the same front. As the last flickers of daylight faded, a comforting sense of closure enveloped the air, a resonance of newfound respect. I began to see us not as caged souls, rigid in the borders of expectation, but as individuals empowered by kindness and the courage to confront silence. My mind replayed this shift like a slow-motion film, the scenes contributing to the notion that perhaps I had orchestrated something bigger than revenge. This was reawakening and rediscovery intertwined. It was as if an invisible thread connected all of us, transforming our fragmented family into a tapestry of colors brighter than I ever could have imagined. Tonight is just the beginning, isn't it? I said, my voice rising above the chatter, grabbing their attention. We need to keep this up. It cannot just be a night of revelations followed by silence. The room, momentarily taken by surprise, gradually erupted with agreement. You're right, Harper. We have to do better, my father affirmed, and my heart soared at the vigor in his voice. Yeah, like a family book club. We can discuss things honestly, Emma chimed in, excitement brimming in her voice. Yes, and weekly game nights where we actually let each other win, my mother declared, laughter bubbling up again, filling the spaces between us. Oh, trust me, I have been too controlling about everything, even games. The humor hung in the air like soothing notes of a familiar song, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph that was unexpected yet so wondrously welcomed. After years of misunderstanding and grappling with emotional barricades, our family was beginning to transform before my eyes. Emotions flowed freely. We discussed lives derailed and paths taken, from college aspirations to dream jobs left behind in pursuit of family stability. I always wanted to be an artist, I admitted, watching their faces light up in surprise. What? You never told us that, Harper, my father prompted, genuine curiosity dancing in his expression. I thought you would think it was a silly dream, I said, the words tumbling out in an unguarded moment of authenticity that felt liberating. I kept waiting for the right moment to share it. A brief silence hung in the air, and then my mother shook her head softly. How could I be so blind? You've always been so creative, and I never realized how much you were holding back. I can only imagine how that weighed on you. I want to help you, Harper. Help you achieve that dream, my father added, a genuine commitment shining through his voice. That is, if it's not too late for me to be involved. The sincerity and warmth of their offer rushed over me like a tidal wave of pure joy. It felt unreal, but I couldn't let disbelief taint this moment. It's never too late, I said, my heart swelling with hope. Look where we started, I continued, my gaze encompassing everyone gathered. If we can come together like this tonight, there's nothing we can't do. And just like that, the unbreakable chains of love and loyalty began to tighten around us, binding us not just as a family, but as a newly formed fortress, ready to withstand whatever life threw at us next. As we drew our final hugs, lingering just a bit longer than necessary, I reflected on how beautiful this new dawn was. I vowed quietly and resolutely to protect this spirit and to ensure that our family would continue to flourish. Here, amid the fading glow of twilight and the warmth of heartfelt connections, We stood resolute against the shadows of our past, ready to embrace the vast horizon that lay ahead. Together,